This is One on One. I am Stacey Carmichael, and today I'm joined by the Honorable Winston Jordan, the Minister of Finance. Welcome to the program, Minister.
Thank you very much, Stacey.
And today we'll be discussing the economy, its performance in 2019, especially against the backdrop of the December 21, 2018 vote in the Parliament. Minister, it's a pleasure having you. Let's get right into the discussions. How would you rate 2019?
Well, 2019, in the aftermath of the no confidence motion, has been mixed, if I would say, mostly challenging, especially in a number of the sectors. In the case of the bauxite, as you know, there are some issues at Rusal, but it's not all bad news. The good news is that the Bosai, the Chinese bauxite in Linden, they're doing reasonably well. And we have coming on stream a new bauxite company called Force Bauxite. They are ready to go. So bauxite production should more or less be on target for this year.
Okay.
In the case of agriculture, as you know, sugar continues to underperform, but there are good performances in other areas such as rice and forestry. The sectors of note are in construction, of course. You know, you see all kinds of construction going on right now, attributed to oil and gas partly, of course, and the other services sector in banking and so on, they are expanding at rates that we have suggested that they will expand. So overall, I think the growth rate would be on target as of now, but if there continues to be slippages in sugar, and if the turmoil in cases of the gold sector, not the traditional gold sector, but the companies, both Goldfield and Troy and Rusal continue, we may have to revise the growth rate.
Okay. Now, a lot has happened since the December 2018 vote. In terms of the projects that you catered for in budget 2019, how were you able to execute those projects?
Well, the really good thing is that we passed the budget prior to the no confidence motion. So at all times, our budget is in place. No confidence motion does not negate the passage of the budget. So we had a full year's budget. The government is still in place. Almost a year after the passage of the no confidence motion. And so we executed the budget just as if it were a normal year, so to speak. There wasn't any impositions on expenditure insofar as it related to the budget itself. Any imposition might have come from any expenditure outside of the budget. But we went to Parliament in June to secure some additional expenditure for GCOM and some other areas. And since then, we have had some crises in sea defense, particularly in the Mahaica area, West Demerara area also, and there have been also 1 or 2 emergencies, particularly in the power sector, that required some additional financing.
Thank you very much for that response. There has been a lot of talk about, since the passage of the vote, there has been a lot of talk about the response of international donors. We don't want to get into any of the negatives, but how has it been on the government's part? How do you rate that response from international donors?
Well, first of all, there's just talk. It was just talk, essentially. The donors continue to disburse as predicted. We don't have too many bilateral engagements, particularly with the United States and Britain. We have very small bilateral engagements with those. Most of our engagements are really multilateral. And when it comes to the bilateral, it's principally between India and China. They have the bulk of the bilateral assistance that we get. And as far as I'm aware, we had no problems with those two as it relates to disbursements. We may have had problems on the projects itself, but it's not a case where they said, oh, we stopped disbursing because you have a no confidence motion. The disbursements in both areas might have been slow because of the problems encountered on projects. I mean, the Cherry Dragon International Airport project, as you know, being mired in various kinds of controversies. and there are some other areas. But on the positive side, the broadband project that we have with the Huawei company of China, that has been going pretty smoothly. The multilateral donors have continued to disburse, and where the disbursement hasn't taken place, as in the case of the Sheriff Street Mandela, which is funded by the Inter-American Development Bank, that has to do with the project itself and not the fact that IDB has stopped disbursing. We have had pretty good disbursements from World Bank. In fact, at the level of the multilateral, they may rank right up there in terms of the highest disbursement for 2019. That is the World Bank. And we continue to engage with all of our multilateral and bilateral donors, and we have had no negative feedback from any of them.
Great news. Some more great news. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, they have projected that Guyana's economy will grow by some 86% in 2020. Now, of course, the opposition responded to that and saying that the IMF is giving Guyanese unrealistic expectations. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I don't think they have negated the fact that the economy will grow by that extent. I think what they're suggesting is that, 86% you need to be euphoric and, lots of dividends coming to the people. First of all, I think 86% is more or less in line with the projections. And that means also that once an economy grows by that rate, regardless of what is driving that growth rate, there must be spin-offs. And you've already seen the spin-offs. I think if you read today's papers, for example, the Commissioner of Inland Revenue, the Commissioner General of GRA is saying that there's a sudden upsurge in requests to sign double taxation agreements, which means you don't tax foreigners here, but they get taxed in the home country, and so on. So that is suggesting the response of a range of people coming in as a result of the expansion of the economy. So the expansion of any economy will bring huge spin-off benefits. So no matter how you twist it and turn it, the economy is growing, and partly or principally, if you want, as a result of the oil, which hasn't even come up as yet, but the expectations of what oil will bring. All right, so no matter how you twist and turn it, and no attempt to dull and dampen the fact that the economy will grow. In fact, I believe it's only in Guyana you could have a scenario where your economy is going to have such a spurting growth, and then you have such negatives coming from a significant side of the population that they represent. But it doesn't negate the fact that the economy is growing. People are happy. You go down to the stores right now, the back pay hasn't even been paid as yet. You go down to Georgetown, it's already chaos down in Georgetown with people spending. You come into flights, I've been coming into flights, and you recognize that some of these people don't belong to Guyana by the way they speak, the way they look, and so on. It means foreigners come in. Most of these flights are coming full. People having difficulty coming home as a result of flights. So this is not an economy where things are not happening. Things are indeed happening as you go around the country, and you will see the difference between 2015 when we came in and 2019 as we look to achieve a second term in office.
Yes. So with all these positive comments as it relates to the growth of the economy, what does that say about the coalition government's management of the said economy?
I think even our own detractors, if they really wanted to be true to themselves, will see that in the 4 years and the challenges that this government faced, that we had done well by the economy and by the people themselves. I think very often we accept that people expected more, but they expected more because they thought that we were inheriting the economy that was growing and with not some of the challenges that we face. But I think when the people understood what we inherited, a Gaisuko, for example, that was totally broke. The same day or the next day when we came into power, the CEO left Gaisuko, broke and gone. We had to find $12 billion to pump into Gaisuko just to pay sugar workers and so on. And we've been paying sugar workers up to last year from the Treasury itself. Subsequent to that, we took a bond of $30 billion secured by the people of this country to allow Gaisuko to exist. We had a situation in rice where the contract with Venezuela was abrogated, which means they unilaterally closed the contract, even as the rice farmers were shipping rice. Tons of their rice were left on the wharves in Guyana as a result of Venezuela not accepting our rice anymore and abrogating the contract. It is this government that had to turn around and pay those farmers for the rice that they had that couldn't be shipped, because they rightly fulfilled their end of the bargain, but the Venezuelans then didn't have it. We had to do that. Plus, when we came in also, we had a heavy amount of aggression that was mounted on us against Venezuela. We had to find serious money to do our diplomatic, because we don't have military. We will never achieve any military power in Guyana. So we have to use our diplomatic and use our friends and bilaterals to help us to sell our case. So we had to get a lot of money diverted there. Then we found things like huge judgments. For example, Rhodesia, I don't know if you remember, this had to do with the fact that the last government were discriminatorily implemented the environmental tax, and as a result we were taken to court, to the CCJ, and lost, and so we had to pay Rhodesia $1.something billion. There's another company, Jalil, who was also taking us to court, and $1.something billion also owed. There are a number of other judgments that run into collectively billions of dollars that are outstanding that we had to fix. So we had all these challenges, all of these money challenges. And in spite of all of that, we kept the economy growing. There was not a single year of negative growth on our 4 years, not a single year of negative growth. And we kept giving the workers of this country the benefits of that growth. 77% increase in the minimum wage between 2015 and 2019. You know, and the individual who wrote in the press that I estimated wrong, I think honestly I was flabbergasted at the degeneration of numeracy in Guyana, because I think the individual added up the increases every year and said it don't come up to 77%, but that's not how you get increase, right? So if he actually put it on 2015, which is what we came at 39,540, I think, and $70,000, you'll see that you'll get 77% increase. That's just a little lesson, a little maths lesson this morning. All right, so we were able to do that. We were able to pay wages in the context of very low inflation. I don't think in our time so far that inflation has passed 2.5%. Very low inflation, except for occasions when the exchange rate dipped more than it should have. We have kept the exchange rate reasonably stable as such. So, and you don't take it from us if you don't want, but take it from the IMF, who since 2015 have been reporting on the progress of the economy under this government, and I don't think we have had a negative report in any one of those. In fact, the best report in the last decade or more that this economy has got from the IMF took place earlier this year. The IMF gave us kudos for the management of the economy.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on salary increases. Now, despite all that you've said about the salary increases and the back pay, etc., still the opposition said there is no room, or the government has abandoned collective bargaining by imposing these salary increases.
Well, coming from the opposition, you know, it has no content. It rings hollow, because except for the Armstrong Awards of 1999, except for the Armstrong Award, there has never been a time when the last government engaged the GPSU in any collective bargaining as such. And the agreements that they were able to reach with the teachers ended up being the same 5%, which is the same 5% that was paid to the public servants all the time. In fact, I was doing a bit of research this morning for another project, and I had to laugh at the level of the 5%. It became so monotonous, you could probably close your eye and open, and you know what, come December, they're going to pay you 5%. Of course, we have been able, despite all of the challenges, to pay increases not one of them being 5%, not a single one of them being 5%. And while we are this also, you remember last year I had introduced the tax-free back pay. All right, we introduced the tax-free back pay, and we were advised strongly that we can pay the tax-free back pay. There was no shouting from the rooftop about the tax-free back pay being illegal last year, and it went through Parliament. Parliament was in session, and the regulation made and was taken to Parliament, and everything was fine. No noise by any person. What happened in 2019? You know, the silly season of election brings out all kinds of people with all kinds of arguments. So suddenly you hear in 2019 that the identical tax-free back pay is illegal. You know, I tell people honestly, what is yours will never come easy. It will never come easy, and there will always be the Grinches and so on who are there fabricating all kinds of excuses why you shouldn't be paid. Or they may even say, well, you know, it's not that we don't want them to get the back pay, but here, no, this is what happened. Forget all of that. The ideal is, luckily, the Commissioner General is also a lawyer and a tax expert, and he advised me correctly that the payment of the tax-free back pay is legal, and last year, and similar advice this year, and come December pay packets, you will expect to get your money tax-free, essentially.
And a clarification on a topic. We're still on salary increases. The opposition also said that since the coalition government has been in office, there has been no increase for sugar workers. Mm-hmm. Clarifying for us, Minister, is the government supposed to be paying these increases or Gaisuco?
Well, I heard, even up to this morning, I heard some misinformation on this. Look, Gaisuco is owned by the government as shareholder, but Gaisuco operates as a separate entity. There's no question about it. They operate like a separate entity. Just like private people public companies may have shareholders, but the shareholders have their rights and responsibilities, and the company and its management and so on has a life and entity of its own. That is what is Gaisuco. Gaisuco has a board, and Gaisuco has a company that is running. If Gaisuco has the wherewithal to pay a salary increase, I imagine that after collective bargaining negotiations with the union, and they're presenting their numbers and so on, that they will come to some decision. I assume that the reason why maybe the unions may not want to go with this kind of approach with Gaisuco is because they know the kind of financial situation that Gaisuco is in. You know, there's a bond that is keeping Gaisuco literally afloat, and that's the $30 billion bond that we have taken for Gaisuco. I heard the opposition leaders say, well, take the bond money and pay wages. Well, of course, he loves to grandstand. Almost every one of these things, if you had the time to rebut, you will rebut and see how foolish many of the statements he's making, they are. The bond, obviously, has been taken from the Republic Bank, and it's for specific purposes. Specific purposes. There was a small part for operating expenses, which has long gone, long exceeded. The bulk of the money is for capital programs itself. Whatever Gaisuco earns by way of the little production that they're doing and selling of the sugar, they meet with current some, not even all, some of the current operations, like the salaries, current salaries, and other current operating expenditure. It is for the union to sit with Gaisuco's management and to determine the feasibility of a back pay. But everybody knows that. But what they're saying then, okay, well, don't worry that. The government owns it, and the government must find the money to pay the back pay. Well, the government itself, this is the same people who say there are too much taxes in the economy. This is the same people who left this government with a situation in NIS where the taxpayers are forced to pay $5 point something billion that was lost with CLICO. This is the same people who went and built the Marriott Hotel with taxpayers' money and who took a loan from Republic Bank. Marriott couldn't meet the bill, and it is these taxpayers, the taxpayers, who have to pay back this loan at the moment. And this is the same people who bankrupted the sugar industry and left the debts for this government to pay. And so we are paying all the loans that the last government took to build Skeldon Estate. We are paying those loans every month, and so on. So these are the same people who left all of these debts and challenges with this government. The same people who go with others talking about this economy is heavily taxed, want us to find the monies to pay the sugar workers. You know, already we are short, if you want to say short, changing the public servants, the discipline services, the people who work general government to provide a range of services because their salaries are extremely low. And we've struggled mightily over the last 4.5 years to bring their salaries as rapidly as possible to some decent level. And that is why we could boast about 77% increase. There's no way the last government could show you where 77% increase in 4 years has ever taken place. As I said, it took them roughly 9 years to move the minimum wage to $39,540 that we inherited, right? Whereas it took us 4 years to move by the same percentage between 2015 and 2018. So those are some of the results we are happy about, and we can crow from now to eternity because you can't change those numbers and you can't change those facts.
Thank you. Well, one of the big questions on all the public servants' minds, IMF has projected the 86% increase growth for next year, 2020. Could they look forward to more salary increases with a coalition government?
Well, with this coalition government, our ultimate objective is to have salaries at a level that, as I said before, befits the job classification. And so it is for us to sit down with the unions, for example, and work out an arrangement, a reasonable arrangement, one that can be sustained over time, to how fast we can reach to this level that the job should get. All right? I don't think spewing out numbers like 75% increase, 25% increase, and so on, cuts the mustard because it comes across as if people are pulling numbers out of the head. Let us sit down and make projections of how the economy grows, how taxes, how much taxes we can collect, how other expenditure growing, and determine how we can pay reasonable salary increases. I think until we get round to that, around the table, rather than just pulling numbers out and say, well, you know, you got to increase salaries by 25%, you got to increase this by 35%, and so on. Until we do that, you know, kind of assessment, and sit down until maybe it will take a whole year, you know, as we go backward and forward and so on. But at least we'll be doing something in a more scientific manner, rather than this urgency to just throw things on the table and then say, let's negotiate around it. Because at the end of the day, whatever you agree to, you have to sustain it from now to literally eternity. You know, if I give you a 10% increase this year, it's not a bonus. Bonus is one-off, right? I can give you a bonus of 10% and I don't have to worry in January. But if I give you a salary increase of 10%, many things have gone up right away. Your salary have gone up, your allowances, if you have acting allowances over time, all those go up automatically with salary. NIS contribution will go up. Your pension will go up. So it's not just about, oh, salary must go up by X%. You have all of these add-ons that you have to add and make them sustainably, you know. And salary is not something when you increase it, you can go and cut it because the government can't afford it. That doesn't happen. So for me, collective bargain will work, first of all, when we can sit around the table as mature people, and first put on the table how the economy, how we see the outlook of the economy, and make projections, long-term projections about growth, inflation, taxes, expenditure, and so on, and come up to some reasonable figure, all with the aim of trying to get to that salary level that we think we all can, we all should enjoy, essentially. But that is where I think the salary issue should entertain. And no opposition that is accustomed to paying you 5% have any modicum of truth or reason to be saying our 9%, which is on a higher base, by the way. Their 5% was when you were earning 26,000 and so on. Our 9% is when you were earning 64,000. So this is 9% of a bigger figure, a bigger base, compared to the 5% of a low base.
Understood. Thank you, Minister. How would you analyze the coalition government's 4 years of socio-economic development as compared to the previous administration?
Well, for me, first of all, I like to highlight what is ours and let other people match what we have done with theirs. Because if you spend time worrying about what they did and so on, I think we get sidetracked very often. If what they did was so glorious, it will always be remembered. I mean, you take the Demerara Harbor Bridge. You don't have to compare any bridge with the Demerara Harbor Bridge because everybody speaks about the Demerara Harbor Bridge, the quality of the engineering, the longevity of the bridge, and so forth. So what I'm saying, if your works speak for yourself, you don't have to even compare it to anybody. Nobody compares the Demerara Harbor Bridge with the Borby's Bridge. You know, it's kind of like, for me, cheese to chalk. You could walk across the Demerara Harbor Bridge, you can't walk across the Borby's Bridge. The Demerara Harbor Bridge stood the test of time, you know, with technology that maybe was about 40 years old, and so on. The supposedly new Borby's Bridge supposed to be having new technology and so on, but it doesn't reach the iconic stage like, say, the Demerara Bridge. So our achievements speak for themselves. Ask the person in Rupununi who has now got water from wells, where before we didn't even think we could have given them water through the wells that we have built. Wells all over the hinterland. Just yesterday, I see another well being opened, and people are joyous about the water that they can get. Ask people in the hinterland about you having a roundabout paved instead of a trail. Ask people in the hinterland about the bridges that they have seen, the health centers that are manned by doctors, the schools. You know, that is where people are speaking. They are talking about. They don't even want to know the last government didn't do this and do that. When they can speak to achievements, you know that they will go out there and return you. But when they start comparing, in the last government we had this and this one you got, then you know you're in a bit of a trouble. But we have achievements that we could sell solidly in every sector, whether they be ICT hubs, the small business, what we have done for small businesses, and so on. When people begin to talk about them openly, we know that we have at least served in that sector. And every sector that we have. The infrastructural development that has been done on this government is second to none. It's second to none. And so now they're trying to muzzle in on the achievements by saying, well, those were our projects. If they were your projects, we wouldn't have to be doing them. You know, if the East Coast Road was your project, why are we now paving the road? You know, and if the Chelijagan was your project, why up to this day we can't even finish the Chelijagan airport? You know, and so on. So that's where they're now trying to muzzle in thing. We don't have no problem. You could say you conceptualize the project, we built it, and we complete it. You know, and conceptualization and birthing of the baby, at two different stages, isn't it?
Yes, correct. Yes. Now, 2019 is almost over, Minister. As the Minister of Finance, looking back, what do you think you can do differently in 2020 as it relates to the management of the economy?
Well, differently depends on whether the constraints that inherent in the economy, whether they continue to exist going forward. Because at every stage of an economy, you will be faced with constraints. And it depends on how you maximize the general objective while minimizing the constraints. There are things that could be done differently. Hindsight is always 20/20, but I get the feeling sometimes that even if you want to do things differently, you need first and foremost full cooperation of all the sectors and the actors in many of these sectors. For example, you look at taxes, for example. I can do things differently in taxes if the base of the tax is broadened as rapidly as I would like it to think. When we came in 2014, many people were being taxed on a relatively small base, and that is why the taxes were so high. A study was done, for example, I think 2 or 3 years ago by the Guyana Revenue Authority, where it showed that people in Linden and Region 10 were paying more taxes than people in Region 6. I mean, just think about it. People in unemployment in Region 10 is reasonably high, and they were paying more taxes in Region 10 than people in Region 6. So the base was narrow, and so high taxes. When we came in, we said day one, we have to do something about this. All right? And so we had 2 studies done, one local, one by the IMF. And we have been implementing the recommendations of those studies as best as we can, such that today, for example, you have the manufacturing sector. Instead of paying taxes of 30%, they're now paying taxes of 25%. You have a situation where VAT has been reduced from 16%. And by the way, not this government implemented VAT. Okay, we inherited VAT. And we said we were going to introduce VAT, reduce the VAT rate. And we have reduced it from 16% to 14%. We've increased the allowance for signing up for VAT to $15 million. So if you're doing sales about the $15 million, you don't have to sign up for the VAT rate. In fact, I think Stacia is on record, this Commissioner General is on record and saying, if we can get the top 100, I think it's 100 he's saying, taxpayers on roll, paying their true taxes, we would receive, I think if I don't want to quote him incorrectly, 2/3 of the taxes that we will be able to get, and the rest will just be others. Continue where we have improved the tax, the whole tax schedule. We have individuals now paying individuals their allowance, personal allowance. When we came in, the personal allowance was $50,000, regardless how much money you earned, regardless. We now have a situation where the personal allowance is $65,000, or 1/3 of your gross income. I want to emphasize this because we got some new party who wants to change Guyana, right? Who was criticizing me, the leader of that party or the president in waiting or whatever you want to call him, says I should be ashamed of the fact that the government only increased the personal allowance by $15,000, which is from $50,000 to $65,000. But sometimes when you want to be that level of untruthfulness, and think you're going to get away with it, I don't think you are. And once you come into the arena of politics, you're going to be fair game. If you were earning $300,000 in 2015 when we came in, you would have got $50,000 as your personal allowance, and you'll have to pay tax on $250,000. And your tax would have been roughly $83,300. So in effect, you are paying $83,300 on an income of $300,000. Under our regime that we have put in place, a person who earns $300,000 doesn't get $65,000 as a personal allowance. They get 1/3. So 1/3 of $300,000 is $100,000. So right away, you have a doubling of your personal allowance between 2015 and we brought in that in 2017, I think. Right away, you would have a doubling of your personal allowance. Then we remove the tax on your contributions to NIS. So all your contributions you were making to NIS are now tax-free. And you could take all as a write-off from tax. All of it. Okay? So now, let us just assume away that for the time being and say now you have to pay taxes on 200,000 because you get 100,000 as your personal allowance, 200,000 left. The first 180,000 of that 200,000 is taxed at 28%. The first 180,000 of that 200,000 is taxed at 28%. And if my maths run fairly quickly, I think that will be roughly about $20-something thousand. And the last 20,000, because 20,000 going to left after you take away 180, is taxed at 40%. So 40% of 20,000, 8,000. So you end up roughly paying roughly $41,000, $42,000, $43,000 in taxes on $300,000. That is the reality. That is the reality. And we don't go boasting and promising things that we can't put in. Oh, when I get in, I can make allowance $100,000. This government has already said that whenever the minimum wage increases, we will change the tax threshold so that the minimum people who are on the minimum wage will not pay any tax. So as soon as we get back into Parliament, we will at least have to change, we'll have to change the income tax threshold from the 65,000 to at least the 70,000 or 1/3. So the 1/3 is there already, taken care of already. So it's just the tax threshold as we increase the salary, which eventually will mean nothing as we continue to increase the salary because the 1/3 will kick in. The 1/3 will kick in. And that is to guarantee you that as you rise in life, okay, there's a recognition that expenses increase and so on, and so your take, as opposed to this flat tax. This last government, who is shouting on the rooftop about small man and real man and all kinds of story, they're the ones who change the income tax to this flat tax that we inherited. Prior to 1992, just prior to 1992, this same 1/3 existed. But when they came into power in 1992, this same government that was meant to love small people and so on, got rid of a progressive tax system to put in a flat tax, which is a regressive tax system. They gave everybody the same allowance, and then everybody was taxed at 1/3 of their income. The most retrogressive system, because there's no equity there. Everybody being taxed at 1/3, everybody getting the same flat allowance. Our system is progressive. We have two rates that tax the high amount. We have a broad personal allowance there, and 1/3 of your income that it automatically gives you, as your salary goes up, automatically gives you a higher personal income. So we don't have to wait to sell people, snow in Guyana, right? We tell people exactly what it is. They can absorb it, and they could come back to you on it, essentially. So as soon as we get back in the Parliament, the minimum, the income tax will change to at least 70,000 a month. That will be equivalent to 840,000 per year, or 1/3 of your gross income, whichever is higher. Okay, so on that score, we are well ahead. The other thing too that you hear is that, this government bringing some 200 taxes. No, I have challenged the opposition leader in Parliament to name the 200 taxes that this government brought in. 200 new, over the word, the adjective new is put into it. 200 new taxes. And this individual who wants to change Guyana also has suddenly come up with that thing too, that I have implemented or imposed 200 new taxes. All they have to do, rather than singing that mantra, is to list these 200 new taxes that I have brought in. Put it out there for the public to see. Where is these 200 new taxes that this government put in? But it is good, it sounds like it's good political propaganda to say, oh, this country is heavily taxed, this government bringing 200 new taxes. Well, name the 200 new taxes. And then we could have a conversation. But they don't want to name the 200 taxes because for them it's good politics just to say 200. It's a large figure, it's a magnified figure, and let's leave it out there. But it's not for us because we know, this government, we know, we have not brought in any 200 new taxes in this country. So we don't lose sleep over that. What we lose sleep about is the constant refrain that this country is heavily taxed. This country is heavily taxed. Well, I don't know, for example, if I have 25%, say, for the manufacturing, and you compare it and say, oh, in X country, it's 20%. I don't know to what extent we comparing like with like. Because I am taxing 25% of the chargeable income after giving a whole range of concessions. They don't talk concessions, right? They don't speak about concessions. The next person may be charging you 20% on your chargeable income without giving you half of these concessions that we give you. So it is not like it may be 20% on chargeable income, yes, and we have 25% on chargeable income. But the issue is how the two of us arrive at the chargeable income. You arrive at the chargeable income after I give you a range of concessions. This person over here arrived at chargeable income after saying that, no, I'm not interested in giving you concessions. I'm going to keep the tax rate low, but I'm not giving all these concessions. And we give a range of concessions. And I can say, virtually unchallenged, that in the 4 years of the coalition government, we have been a private sector friendly government. And it's borne out by just going to our budgets and listing all of the concessions we have given to the private sector since 2015. I have done so, and it's come up to pages of concessions. And you don't have to take my word for it. The budget speech is a public document. Go in there and see the concessions we have given to all sectors: tourism, mining, manufacturing, industry. We have given all that. It's this government that made the vacation allowance of private workers, private sector workers, equivalent to the ones of the public sector. It is this government that done so. And they had been hankering for that, they say, for years, and nobody will listen to them. This government did it. This government did. And we could go through, it will take us whole day going through the concessions and explaining the concessions that we have given since this government has come in to being. And that is not necessarily at the end of the day, our intent is to promote investment of all kinds, but particularly investment that is innovative, using technology, is being located away from the bright lights, like our friend who does Heart of Palm, right? He's doing that in the heart of the jungle, and so on. And our friend who used to be in Rupnoni doing rice, and so on. Those get concessions. People don't even realize that since 1997, Linden, Kokwani, Aichuni area has been designated an area. There's a whole regime of tax-free incentives if you invest in those areas. They don't know this. But I'm saying, since 1997, under the previous government, and yet they come and say, oh, there's no incentive to invest in the interior. It is palpably wrong, right? So all these incentives are there for people, those things we call pioneering industries. And indeed, if you want to go, say, in Kimbio, where there's no light, there are trails, and you blaze in a trail and so on, you get all these industries. People want to invest in Georgetown, right? People want to invest in Georgetown, where there's already light, there's already water, there's labor compared to Kimbio, and so on, and get all of the incentives compared to if you go and invest in Kimbio, essentially. But incentives are just that, incentives to industry, to aid industry. And somebody who's pioneering clearly got to get far more incentive than somebody who's going to invest in an area. In fact, in areas that are called built-up areas, incentives virtually don't exist. But we have been given incentives of all kinds for people investing in built-up areas. And maybe at the end of the day, the whole question of incentives and concessions and so on, as we go forward, will have to be reviewed thoroughly and bring them in line with best practices. Because as our economy grows and mature, and we have better infrastructure, and like going into the login centers, we have better infrastructure and so on, that all these kinds of incentives that we go in, maybe they get rationalized and they get reformed, so that our economy now comes into modernity than where we are at. Because every time somebody got to invest now, everybody wants complete incentives, free duty-free fuel, duty-free this, that, and it's very difficult to police these concessions. And concessions are transferable. If you got a hotel and the concession in the hotel finish, you could tell me you add on a piece, and then I got to give you concessions to that. But if I give you a concession on a bed sheet, I don't know that it's going here rather than it's going over here where the concessions have burnt out. So it's very difficult to police concessions. And so we have to look at new issues like tax credit, giving people tax credits and so on, as opposed to concessions. It is better to give tax credit because it's properly monitored than these concessions that you can't. If you remember the story with the migrants, you come in, you say you're a migrant, you bring in a couple of fancy TVs, some vehicles, and then you don't even spend a week, you're gone back out. And those people are, so it's very, very difficult to monitor concessions. And if I believe the whole of GRA, if you take all the staff, and you still won't be able to monitor concessions. So I think it's an area going forward that we have to review and reform, so that we spend less time on concessions, more time on improving the infrastructure, both social infrastructure, that is skills and so on, and physical infrastructure, roads, ports, light. If you can make light cheap, it will be better for the manufacturers. Water, proper water, rather than having to go and desalinate it or whatever the case may be. And whatever else goes into physical infrastructure, so that the people can rely less on concessions and more on their ingenuity to get businesses going and competitive.
Thank you very much, Minister. Oh, as we wrap up the program, and in keeping with the season, is there any special Christmas message you would like to leave with the public?
Yes. Well, first of all, before I get to the public, I would like to wish my staff hard-working, very, very hard-working under pressure. We didn't talk about oil and gas, but we have grappled with that. And our ministry has been, if you want to say, leading the pack, because we brought out the Natural Resource Fund, brought it from green paper to legislation, which was passed this year. And we are about to establish the account. I did say last time the account is being established by Bank Guyana, but actually that is not right. The actual account for the Natural Resource Fund will be established with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and we're actually in the process of getting the requirements to get that account going, and we are working on getting the committees established. So come March, I don't know when the government will be in place and so, but post there, we will have that committee up and running. Meanwhile, as we receive the monies, if we receive any before election, we will park it into there, put it into the account, and wait on a new parliament and the committees to engage before we start spending. But yeah, so I would like to thank my staff for the hard work that they put in. The entities of which I serve as minister, Bank of Guyana, NIS, Bureau of Statistics, NISEL, Guyana National Shipping, Guyana Oil Company, and Dependents Pension Fund, whoever else. I hope I haven't forgotten you, because I won't live it through this season. To wish them and their families Merry Christmas. To the general public, you will see us out there in our green shirts during the Christmas season, and we want to hear from you in terms of how Christmas is going and how you see 2020 and how you see us helping you achieve your goals in 2020 and beyond. It's an exciting period coming up, and like I love to say, peace is yours, but it won't be given to you. You have to work towards and extend, make certain that you grab it. A lot of Grinches are at Christmas, and they will exist long after Christmas is finished. May you have a wonderful Christmas with your families and friends, and please, accidents are too many. Let us have not a single more accident for the rest of the year at least. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for joining us.
Thank
And
you,
thank
Stacey.
you to the public for joining us on One on One. I'm Stacey Carmichael saying have a great day.